Somewhere in a rusting barn, there's a machine that once moved mountains, and nobody remembers its name. These aren't John Deere. They aren't Ford. They were built by engineers who refused to compromise on power, by companies that burned bright and disappeared. 10 tractor brands erased by time, mergers and bad luck. Yet in their prime, they were the most feared machines in any field. Number 10. Minneapolis Moline. Before we get into the machines themselves, we need to talk about a company that didn't just build tractors, it built visions of what agriculture could become. Minneapolis Moline was formed in 1929 through the merger of 3 companies: Minneapolis Steel and Machinery, Minneapolis Threshing Machine Company, and Moline Implement Company. From the very beginning, this was a brand that thought differently. What made Minneapolis Moline genuinely remarkable was the UDLX comfort tractor released in 1938. This wasn't just a tractor, it had a full enclosed cab with a heater, a radio, and a passenger seat. In 1938, when most farmers were sitting on open iron seats in freezing wind, was offering something that looked and felt like a luxury automobile mated to a farm machine. Only about 150 UDLX were ever sold. It was too expensive and too radical for its time, but the engineering statement it made was unmistakable. But the real power story came later. In the 1950s and 1960s, Minneapolis Moline produced the G-Series tractors, with the G1000 Vista leading the charge. That machine packed a 504 cubic inch engine, a massive displacement for the era, producing over 100 horsepower at a time when most competitors struggled to break 80. The G1000 Vista also featured that signature prairie gold paint and an advanced cab that gave operators a panoramic view of the field. It was refined, powerful, and decades ahead of its time. Minneapolis Moline was absorbed by White Motor Corporation in 1963 and eventually phased out entirely by 1974. Today, restored tractors command serious money at auctions, and enthusiast clubs keep the legacy fiercely alive. Number 9. Hart-Parr. Charles Hart and Charles Parr didn't just build powerful machines, they literally created the category. It was Hart-Parr's sales manager, W.H. Williams, who coined the word tractor in 1906, combining traction and motor to replace the cumbersome phrase gasoline traction engine. Before that, nobody had a clean word for what these machines were. Hart and Parr gave the entire industry its name. Founded in Charles City, Iowa in 1897, Hart-Parr built some of the earliest and most brutally powerful gasoline-powered farm tractors ever made. Their 1903 machine, known as Old Number 1, is widely considered the first commercially successful gasoline tractor ever sold. It weighed 14,000 pounds and produced 30 horsepower, staggering numbers for the era when horses still ruled every field on Earth. The old 1730, produced in the mid-19-teens, became one of their most celebrated models. It was a 2-cylinder monster that could handle any tillage or threshing task thrown at it. The company was known for building machines with legendary longevity. Some Hart-Parr tractors stayed in active farm service for 30 or 40 years because they were built to an almost irrational standard of durability. In 1929, Hart-Parr merged with 3 other manufacturers, Oliver Chilled Plow, Nichols and Shepard, and the American Seeding Machine Company, to form the Oliver Farm Equipment Company. The Hart-Parr name was eventually dropped in 1937. But without Hart-Parr, there is no modern tractor industry. Every machine we'll discuss on this list, every machine John Deere or Case or any manufacturer has ever built, owes something to Charles Hart and Charles Parr working in a machine shop in Iowa at the turn of the 20th century. Number 8. Rumely OilPull. There is something almost mythological about the Rumely OilPull. Built by the Advance Rumely Company of LaPorte, Indiana, the OilPull was specifically engineered to run on kerosene, which was cheaper than gasoline and far more available to rural farmers in the early 20th century. The genius of the OilPull wasn't just that it could burn cheaper fuel, it was that the engineers designed an oil cooling system so effective that the machines became known for running cool and clean under conditions that would destroy any competitor. The OilPull line launched in 1910 and grew into one of the most comprehensive product ranges in early tractor history. The machines were categorized by letter and power rating. the Model B2545, the Model E3060, and the enormous Model F1530 among others. The naming convention itself told you the drawbar and belt pulley horsepower, and Rumely didn't fudge those numbers. Independent testing consistently confirmed that OilPulls delivered what they promised. The flagship Model H1630 became wildly popular with wheat farmers across the Great Plains because of its reliability over marathon plowing sessions. These were not delicate machines. OilPulls were designed to work all day and all night during harvest season without complaint. Farmers trusted them with their livelihoods, and the machines consistently delivered. The Advanced Rumely Company was acquired by Allis-Chalmers in 1931, a casualty of the Great Depression and the brutal consolidation that wiped out dozens of independent manufacturers. The OilPull name disappeared, but the machines themselves were so robustly built that many survived for decades. Original OilPulls regularly appear at antique tractor shows today, still running on the same principles that made them revolutionary over 100 years ago. Number 7. Cockshutt Farm Equipment. Most American tractor enthusiasts have heard of every major brand except one, Cockshutt, and that's a genuine shame, because Cockshutt Farm Equipment of Brantford, Ontario, was producing machines that matched and sometimes exceeded their American counterparts in both power and innovation. They just did it quietly and in Canada. Cockshutt's history stretches back to 1877, when James Cockshutt founded the company as an implement manufacturer. The company entered the tractor business in the 1940s and quickly established a reputation for exceptional engineering. What truly set Cockshutt apart was their 1958 Model 570, which featured a live independent PTO, meaning the power takeoff shaft could be engaged and disengaged independently of the transmission. This sounds technical, but it was a massive practical advancement. It meant farmers could stop the tractor without killing the PTO-powered implement, a critical capability for mowing, baling, and other operations. The Cockshutt 1900 diesel, produced in the early 1960s, was a 6-cylinder powerhouse that farmers across the Canadian prairies swore by. At a time when most manufacturers were still heavily focused on gasoline engines, Cockshutt was pushing diesel technology aggressively and building machines that could plow through the heavy clay soils of Ontario and Manitoba without bogging down. Cockshutt was eventually absorbed into the White Motor Corporation family in 1962, and the brand name faded. But in Canada, particularly in Ontario and the Prairie provinces, old Cockshutt tractors are still found, still worked on, and still respected by farmers who understand that this Canadian company competed with the world's best and frequently won. Number 6. Waterloo Boy. Here's a fact that stops most people cold. John Deere, one of the most powerful brands in the history of agriculture, did not develop their own tractor. They bought one. In 1918, John Deere & Company purchased the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company of Waterloo, Iowa, specifically to acquire their tractor line. The machine at the center of that deal was the Waterloo Boy. The Waterloo Boy Model R, introduced in 1914, was a simple, honest, brutally effective machine. It was powered by a 2-cylinder horizontal engine running on kerosene and produced about 25 horsepower on the belt, respectable performance for the era. More importantly, it was reliable. The Waterloo Boy had already sold thousands of units before Deere came knocking, and the company's Iowa roots gave it a loyal customer base among Midwestern grain farmers. The Model N, which followed the R, refined the formula and became even more commercially successful. An independent test at the University of Nebraska in 1921, of the first ever conducted there, confirmed the Waterloo Boy's rated power and demonstrated that the company's claims were honest. At a time when manufacturers routinely exaggerated horsepower figures, that kind of verified integrity was worth its weight in gold. John Deere absorbed the Waterloo Boy brand and eventually transitioned to their own tractor designs, still using the 2-cylinder layout that would define Deere machines for the next 4 decades. Without the Waterloo Boy, John Deere might have remained an implement company. The Waterloo Boy didn't just start a legacy. It launched the most dominant tractor brand in history. Number 5. Twin City Tractor. While Hart-Parr and Rumely were building iron giants, the Minneapolis Steel and Machinery Company was pursuing a different philosophy under their Twin City brand. Where some competitors prioritized brute size, Twin City focused on precision engineering, smooth power delivery, and mechanical efficiency. The result was a series of tractors that were genuinely ahead of their time in terms of refined performance. The Twin City 6090 was one of the largest and most powerful tractors built in the 19-teens, with a 4-cylinder engine producing a claimed 90 horsepower on the belt, an almost incomprehensible figure for 1913. These machines were built for large-scale wheat and grain operations across Minnesota, the Dakotas, and into Canada, where the scale of farming demanded power that smaller machines simply couldn't provide. The Twin City 6090 wasn't just large, it was engineered to maintain consistent power output across long working days without the mechanical failures that plagued many early giants. Twin City later produced smaller, more practical models, including the 1220 and the 1728, which brought their precision engineering philosophy down to a price point that regular farmers could access. These machines had fully enclosed valve gear, a feature that protected the engine from dust and debris and dramatically extended service life in field conditions. The Twin City name was carried forward when Minneapolis Steel merged into Minneapolis Moline in 1929. For a brief period, both names were used together, Twin City Minneapolis Moline, before the Twin City designation was eventually retired. But those early machines represent some of the finest precision engineering the American tractor industry ever produced in its pioneering era. Number 4. Lanz Bulldog. European tractor history has its own forgotten giants, and none is more fascinating than the Lanz Bulldog. Built by Heinrich Lanz AG of Mannheim, Germany, the Bulldog began production in 1921 and became one of the most successful and distinctive tractors ever made on any continent. The machine's defining characteristic was its engine, a single-cylinder, 2-stroke hot bulb engine that could run on virtually any flammable liquid, including crude oil, vegetable oil, tar oil, and even used motor oil. The hot bulb engine worked by preheating a metal chamber called the hot bulb using a blowtorch before starting. Once warm, the engine could ignite almost any fuel that was injected into it. For farmers across rural Germany, Eastern Europe, and South America, many of whom had no reliable access to refined gasoline or diesel, this flexibility was not a novelty. It was the entire reason they could farm mechanically at all. The Lanz HR2 and its successors, produced in the 1930s and 1940s, were massive, slow-turning machines that generated enormous torque at very low RPM. The flagship models produced up to 55 horsepower, and the characteristic sound of a Lanz Bulldog, a slow, deep, rhythmic thump completely unlike any other tractor, became as familiar across German farmland as the sound of horses had been a generation earlier. John Deere acquired Lanz in 1956 and transitioned the Mannheim factory to conventional diesel tractor production. The Bulldog name was retained briefly, but the distinctive hot bulb engine disappeared. Today, running Lanz Bulldogs are among the most cherished and valuable antique tractors in the world. At European vintage tractor rallies, the Lanz Bulldog's unmistakable heartbeat sound draws crowds unlike any other machine. Number 3. Oliver 88. Oliver Farm Equipment was born from the 1929 merger that also consumed Hart-Parr, and for 4 decades it built some of the most respected and genuinely powerful tractors in American agriculture. The Oliver 88, introduced in 1947, stands as one of the finest expressions of mid-century American tractor engineering, and it remains one of the most beloved machines among collectors today. The Oliver 88 was offered in both gasoline and diesel configurations, and its 6-cylinder engine was a revelation in an era when most competitors were still building 4-cylinder machines. The extra cylinders provided smoother power delivery and better low-end torque, and the 88 was able to pull a 4-bottom plow through heavy ground with a composure that shocked farmers accustomed to older technology. Independent Nebraska tractor tests confirmed the 88 diesel produced over 50 horsepower on the drawbar, exceptional performance for 1947. Oliver's engineering philosophy prioritized long service life alongside raw power. The 88's engine was specifically designed with generous bearing surfaces and precision tolerances that allowed the machines to accumulate thousands of hours with minimal wear. Dealers marketed Oliver tractors with the phrase "built to last a generation," and in many cases that was not marketing hyperbole. Oliver 88s worked on American farms well into the 1970s and 1980s, decades after their production ended. The Oliver Super 88 and 880 variants that followed continued to refine the formula, And by the time White Motor Corporation absorbed Oliver in 1969, the brand had built an almost unshakable reputation for quality. The White takeover effectively ended the Oliver engineering legacy as an independent force, and within a few years the distinctive green and white machines were replaced by White-branded products. But the Oliver 88 endures as a symbol of American industrial confidence at its post-war peak. Number 2. Steiger. The story of Steiger tractor is one of the most remarkable origin stories in the history of American manufacturing. In 1957, brothers Douglas and Maurice Steiger of Red Lake Falls, Minnesota, built their first tractor in the family barn, literally in the barn, because nothing on the market could handle the scale and soil conditions of their large northern Minnesota grain operation. They needed more power and four-wheel drive, and since nobody was selling what they needed, they built it themselves. That first machine, a massive articulated four-wheel drive tractor, worked so well that neighboring farmers started asking the Steiger brothers to build one for them. Word spread. Orders came in. By the early 1960s, the Steiger brothers had moved out of the barn and into manufacturing facilities, and by the 1970s, Steiger Tractor Inc. had become a major force in high-horsepower agriculture. The Steiger machines were not subtly powerful. They were shockingly, almost absurdly powerful for their era. The Steiger Panther and Tiger series of the 1970s featured turbocharged diesel engines producing 225, 280, and eventually over 300 horsepower, figures that major manufacturers wouldn't match until years later. These machines were built for the large-scale grain operations of the northern Great Plains and the vast wheat farms of eastern Washington and Oregon, where standard two-wheel drive tractors simply couldn't generate the traction to work effectively. Steiger pioneered the articulated frame design that became standard on all large four-wheel drive tractors worldwide. The articulation point in the middle of the machine allowed it to turn tightly despite its enormous size and to maintain four-wheel contact on uneven ground. Every large four-wheel drive tractor built by any manufacturer today, every Case Quad Track, every John Deere 9 Series, every New Holland T9 exists in its current form because of what two brothers built in a barn in Minnesota in 1957. Case IH acquired Steiger in 1986, and the machines were rebadged as Case IH Steiger, a name that survives today. But the independent Steiger brand, with its distinctive green paint and the big cat naming convention, Panther, Tiger, Bearcat, Lion, Cougar, represents one of the most powerful engineering stories the American agricultural industry has ever produced. Number 1. Allis-Chalmers. No list of forgotten tractor power can be complete without Allis-Chalmers at the top. And the word forgotten barely applies, because Allis-Chalmers left such a profound mark on the tractor industry that its innovations are still shaping how agricultural machines are designed and sold today. Founded in 1901 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin through a series of mergers, Allis-Chalmers entered the tractor market in 1914 and quickly established a reputation for fearless experimentation. In 1929, the company introduced the Model U, the first tractor in history offered with pneumatic rubber tires as standard equipment. Before this, all tractors ran on steel wheels with iron lugs. The Model U demonstrated that rubber tires dramatically reduced soil compaction, improved fuel economy, allowed faster field speeds, and could be driven on public roads without destroying the surface. Rubber tires on tractors are now universal. Allis-Chalmers made that happen. In 1948, Allis-Chalmers introduced the WD model with a feature called Snap Coupler Hitch, a system that allowed a single farmer to attach implements to the tractor quickly and without assistance. Before Snap Coupler, attaching equipment was a two-person job requiring physical alignment of heavy components. This was not a small improvement. It saved farmers hours of labor every single week. Then came the D series, particularly the D17, introduced in 1957. This machine was offered in gasoline, diesel, LP gas, and even a high-compression gasoline variant, giving farmers unprecedented fuel flexibility. The D17 diesel produced over 46 horsepower on the drawbar and featured Allis-Chalmers' distinctive power crater piston design that improved combustion efficiency. The D17 became one of the best-selling tractors of its era across the American Midwest. But Allis-Chalmers' most extraordinary achievement came in 1959 when they demonstrated a tractor powered by a hydrogen fuel cell, the first fuel cell vehicle of any kind ever publicly demonstrated in the United States. The machine produced 20 horsepower from a fuel cell stack using liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. It didn't go into production. The technology wasn't commercially viable in 1959, but the fact that a tractor company was conducting hydrogen fuel cell research 65 years ago and demonstrating a working prototype tells you everything you need to know about the engineering culture at Allis-Chalmers. The 1970s brought the 7000 series and then the flagship Ford W305, a four-wheel drive articulated beast producing 305 horsepower that competed directly with Steiger and Big Bud for dominance in high horsepower farming. The Ford W305 used a Cummins turbocharged diesel engine and featured sophisticated hydraulics and a 12-speed power-shift transmission that was state-of-the-art for the early 1980s. Allis-Chalmers was sold to a German company, Klockner Humboldt Deutz, in 1985. The tractor division was rebadged as Deutz Allis and eventually became AGCO, which today is one of the three largest agricultural equipment manufacturers in the world, owning brands including Fendt, Massey Ferguson, and Valtra. The corporate lineage runs directly back to those Milwaukee engineers who put rubber tires on a tractor in 1929 and changed farming forever. If you want to see more deep dives into machines that built the modern world, subscribe and leave a comment telling us which of these 10 brands surprised you the most. The comment section on videos like this always produces incredible knowledge from farmers and collectors who have first-hand experience with these machines. We read every one,